So, still in talking about access to justice and all, and activism and gender-based violence and thinking gender issues, let's now talk about gender-sensitive mediation. And to join us in the studio this morning is a lady from the Federation of Women Lawyers, FIDA, Kenya. She is the Client Service Officer, Access to Justice team. Irene Ocholla, good morning.
Morning.
Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you.
Welcome to the hot seat of the Situation Room. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
Now, the other conversation we're talking about gender identity, sexual orientation, expression. So we are focusing now on gender and the female gender.
Yes.
The others, they have their own conversation. Now, when you say gender sensitive mediation,
Yes.
when you talked about you coming to join us earlier, we asked ourselves, so what does that mean? We've had conversations about mediation and what mediation is, but take us back now. Start with mediation,
Right.
and then make it gender sensitive.
Right. Mediation is your space. If I break it down, mediation is your space to come and discuss your issues and name your terms so that you own your outcome.
Your space, your issues, your term, your outcome. Okay.
Right. So then a mediator will come into this mediation space and bring the professionalism that you often lack when you talk to each other in other people's absence. So they will come and moderate the situation, the conversation, the rules, how you will navigate negotiation between the two of you, and hopefully then you're able to leave the mediator's presence with a settlement. Something that allows you to go into the future with less conflicts, and everyone is clear on their role in terms of what is left of this relationship that we had, or what is ongoing in this relationship that we have. Often in our space at FIDA, it's mostly parental. Parents created children, but now they're no longer a couple. But the element of being a parent precedes their conflict. And they have to manage that. In a way that is, if we have a jackpot, is good for them. But what we really want, it is safe for the children. Because adult relationships can be a bit difficult to navigate. Yes.
Okay. Now, you've actually now gone further. You've defined mediation very well.
Yes.
You've given us the mediation in the context of FIDA.
Yes.
But then you've only brought in the aspect of family disputes.
Yes.
Is that the only thing
No.
that FIDA deals with when it comes to mediation?
Well, I will use safe words to describe family.
Okay.
All right? People in their situation may perceive themselves to be family. Other people may not imagine that's family because they have not been to the AGs.
They haven't been introduced.
And they haven't been, and you see, they don't have a certificate. So people call themselves many things. Sometimes when they look at those things under the lens of the law, then they are told, oh, no, you actually didn't have a marriage.
Yeah.
You had a relationship, and maybe it's called cohabitation. And sometimes people feel that puts on their table certain things and clause a lot more because they went into that situation feeling, I have a marriage. I have all the rights here. So then FIDA operates substantively. Really, the bulk of the things we do are in that family space. Relational space. Let me use relational space as more descriptive of what we do, because you may not have what functionally people will refer to as family, but you have a relationship. And that relationship brings you to the table to discuss relational things. Going back to your earlier question, how then does this gender lens come in? Gender has to do with the roles that you functionally fulfill in life. When you go into a boardroom, depending on your gender lens and how you operate, do you expect to see it filled with all men? Or do you see it filled with all women? Or do you see a mixture of men and women?
Okay.
So that really drives how you interact with the world around you. When you have a child and you go to the push room and you're told it's a boy, do you see him skating to State House and his life is going to be one of amazing accomplishments because you see the boy child as coming with this privilege and therefore he's able to open these doors? And when you go to the push room and you're told you have a baby girl, do you see her in aprons? Do you see her going to the river to fetch water? So now you have suddenly added onto your pool of people, workers, people who are going to be able to fetch water, right? So how you see the world around you and the labels that you attach to people then is what you will assign them when you're looking at them in terms of what their gender roles are. You will see them as people who are enabled, can navigate life, can bring to the table what the other, a man or a woman, can bring to the table. Right. So at FIDA then, we walk through life in the mediation space, looking at life through this gender lens. What is it that's happening around this table that is attributed to power imbalances? Because these inequalities in life bring imbalances in people's lives. Someone will come to my home and pay dowry, and from that point, they will say that now I own you. So all the education that your parents put you through is now null and void. You're going to stay home and take care of my children. Okay? So then that removes power from me in terms of how am I going to navigate life in the professional world. Okay? Culture may be the driving force in this man's world. And he says, you know, my mother did not go to the office space, and there's all of awful things that happen in the office space, so then my wife will not go into the office space. And culture is driving his understanding how he interacts with the world around him, and therefore will be limiting this person's life. So when you come to the relational conversation I talked about earlier, you have children, and with these children, you have responsibilities. With responsibilities, you need resources to be able to navigate your parental situation. So at a time when we are fighting more and loving each other less, or maybe never, people tend to withhold onto the resources they have. Sometimes using that to punish you, who is now the new enemy. Okay? So when I sit around the mediation table and these parents actually have responsibilities and obligations defined in law that you're supposed to provide, and I've been playing wife, you can't go to work, and I have no resources, and I'm used to begging for you to give me. Now that we are in this not very nice place, mostly hostile, how would we continue to fulfill the parenting obligation? Because the reality of what happens at our desk is by the time, sadly, let me add sadly, by the time the parties actually come to us, one of them has usually sort of moved on, found new ways of finding comfort, new ways of what their money can do. So by the time you're coming to FIDA, you want to be clawing from that plate, and they're not very happy.
So let's just put it this way, Irene.
Yes.
So by the time people are coming here,
yes,
one party at least has moved on.
Most of the time.
Has a new partner.
Most of the time.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
And has found other ways of spending their money.
Yes.
With this new partner.
Yes.
Or with this new life.
Yes.
And the other party that now is on the holding the shorter end of the stick is wondering, so now what? Okay, continue.
Yeah. So when FIDA is exercising gender-sensitive mediation, it's not about going out of our way to side. It's about seeing this lens for what it is, acknowledging that these people had a life. These are their new choices. How can we support them in these new choices to navigate their interests and their needs?
Now, FIDA
yes.
is the Federation of Women Lawyers
yes.
of Kenya.
Yes.
Okay? Already, perception-wise, bias.
Absolutely.
So when you talk about feeder, women, and then you say
Gender balance.
gender bias, gender sensitive,
Yes.
it doesn't come out as gender sensitive. It just comes out as women sensitive mediation.
Yes. Yes.
Do you
I
face
hear
that a lot with the parties when the parties are coming to you?
Yeah.
Like most of the parties that will apply for you to mediate for them will be the women.
Very true.
And the men then?
Very true. And women literally, live life around our world knowing their own feeder. Okay? Their own feeder. And feeder is occasionally, when it's very convenient, they whip society. I'm going to take you to feeder.
Yes.
They're going to do to you what I think they should do to you.
Yep.
So sometimes they're frustrated when feeder doesn't do to the men the things that they want feeder to do to the men. And that is the scenario, the environment around the
That
mediation
is the
space.
question I'm asking.
Okay?
Irene.
Men can
when cases come to
yes,
you
yes.
and you're doing this gender sensitive mediation, is it sensitive to both men and women equally?
And that's where I'm going.
Okay.
Okay? And hang on to my gender lens narration.
Okay.
Because the parties actually who show up at feeder have equal opportunity to knock on our doors to seek mediation services. The woman doesn't have does not have exclusive rights to seek mediation. A man, just like the woman, can leave their house and say, I have trouble at home, I need feeder to assist because we're not getting along. Okay? So that space is open to the man as it's open to the woman. When they step into the mediation space, they bring their needs. They raise their interests. The man is not pegged on the interest the woman raised earlier. It's open space. She raised these, but you also have the same opportunity to name what your interests and your needs are.
Is it from as the mediation begins?
Yes.
Because obviously from the very first thing that you talked about,
Yes.
Bi-party, four-party, for those which you all then be comfortable with.
Yes.
Into a mediation,
Right.
is it led by a feeder mediator?
Feeder aligned mediator, which means this mediator isn't just a mediator who's purely done mediation training,
But-
they are also versed with gender-based issues.
Okay.
Yes.
So, do we go into this mediation with a skew towards understanding that the female then should benefit over and above anybody else from the mediation? Is that what you go in?
I will not, the person who benefits over and above everybody else in this session should not be the man or the woman, it's the children.
Okay.
It's the needs of the children. So who is it who can fulfill what functions in terms of what they're claiming that will benefit the children the most?
Okay.
The greatest beneficiary is
the
the
child.
children, not these two parties.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So because then when we're sick, so because we're talking about gender sensitivity, if you can open it up for us a little bit,
Yes.
where does the sensitivity then apply? Is it just based on what you've said? The sensitivity then is applied towards the subject of these two parties coming
Yes.
together.
Yes.
The sensitivity is applied towards the children. Is that what we're
Yes.
saying?
Yes.
So, okay, please.
Let's say we remove the children out of the equation, all right? So then they have a civil matter. These people invested in some property. They're not married, so they can't call it matrimonial property, but they have a civil claim against each other. They're now going separate ways. How can they come and discuss how they're going separate ways without tearing each other
Apart.
Okay? So then the interest that they have, say we have this property, I want this person to just indemnify me, only give me back what I put in. Okay? Mediation helps these people think about how can I navigate my best interests from this conflict, right? If, say, the woman put in more and the man put in very little, it's not about what I think as a mediator should be the settlement out of this. It's nudging their consciences into thinking, how best can you walk out of this with least conflict, and all of you guys are comfortable and happy. Yes. So I am aware that this man may be wanting to divide this in the middle somehow, because maybe he feels whatever he put in kind should enable him to get to that place. But how can I, when I do, there's an element of mediation that's called caucus, talking with the parties separately. So how do you, them having named their interests, how do you help them come to the middle so that they can see through each other's lenses? This is what I would like, but this is what I need. Yes. So you balance these people's needs, not because you're siding with either party.
Yeah.
Yes.
So essentially, the role that you've just described, can one summarize it as marriage guidance and counseling session?
Will not be counseling.
End of marriage guidance.
During a counseling session.
I would not, well, counseling is the word you use. I term it guidance. It's guidance into how they can resolve this dispute. But we don't do counseling inside a mediation, because counseling brings on board a lot of therapy that we don't do in mediation. Mediation, we focus on the needs and the interests. But if you have a counseling need, then of course we usher you into yet another space, which is the psychosocial program.
You know,
Yes.
when the moment you bring in the subject of needs,
Yes.
your counseling, it does not matter what you say. The moment someone has the opportunity to talk about what is bothering them,
Yes.
counseling has begun. Therapy is on course. Because what you're saying is that
Yes.
the ability to discuss these things among themselves was not possible.
Yes.
So they've come to a neutral party
Yes.
to air their deepest hurts and problems regarding this particular subject.
Yes.
There really is no difference between, as far as that is concerned. But you take it a step further. You then look at perhaps some of the mundane issues around it.
Yes.
But in a relationship of whatever nature, you can't divorce the emotions from it.
Excellent. Absolutely agreed.
Yes.
Yes.
So, an understanding of this. Now,
Yes.
I'm going somewhere with what I'm saying.
Yes.
I'm going to ask.
Yes.
When you have individuals who are mediators, beyond being trained as mediators and beyond some of them being lawyers,
Yes.
what else are they trained in?
They could be a pilot, they could be a chief, they could be a doctor. They come from wherever they're coming to, and they train as mediators. What is useful is them being able to identify those emotional issues that sometimes have the power to derail the mediation process, right? So us equipping them with gender sensitivity is for them to know when they're in session, what should I be nudging these people towards? For example, when people come into mediation, I said earlier, some people have moved on 10 steps, their lives are rolling. Some people are still here with anger and resentment and betrayal. So when they are in mediation, they are jostling but unequally, right? Some people are very much on the emotional side. Some people are very much on the functional side. The element and skill we use in mediation is allow these people to ventilate. Not ventilate so that I can journey with them as a therapist would, but allow them to move beyond their emotional leaning into now a functional space. Yes, I have had these pains. You've betrayed me like this. You did this with my sister, and you did this with the maid, and you did this with that colleague you work with. But now,
Here we are.
here we are. So mediation gives them several opportunities to come and ventilate, get it out, so that perchance they get into this space where now they both are seeing, okay, all this has been said and done, but now we are parents. We have this to resolve. How do you want to resolve it? And I've accepted. Yes, I even moved on with this person who I betrayed you with.
Yeah.
But now we are parents. So the mediator keeps nudging them into that space, but we not without the opportunity to ventilate until these emotions are reasonably spilled out. Because if they're not, these guys are not making any progress. Where they take the pains is where therapy comes in. They can take it to a therapist, you know, outside of the mediation session and heal, do the healing journey from that point on. Yes.
When you come from this break, I want to ask you, what about the instances where what's in contention is not the children, but the property, minus children.
Okay.
What lens do you then wear at that point? It's 8:30. Let's take this quick break. Irene Ocholla is a client services officer, access to justice at FIDA Kenya. We are talking about gender-sensitive mediation and giving us from the context of FIDA and how they do it.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Good. Now, Irene.
Yes.
So people have come to you.
Yes.
They're at this end stage of their relationship,
Yes.
whatever relationship this has been,
Yes.
legal or not legal. There's a relationship.
Yes.
And there are some things that they own together. And those ones are in contention.
Yes.
Now, how do you apply this gender sensitivity and lens to this mediation?
You see, when it comes to property, I know that at the tail end of this journey, for people to walk away feeling it's been settled, they will need to demonstrate some sort of contribution. Because if they don't agree in mediation, they're definitely headed to court. But you see, when they were back here starting this journey, they weren't thinking court. They were thinking love, accommodating each other, building a dream together, believing in each other's dreams. That is what the conversation was about.
The benefit of the doubt.
Yes, you know, this person. Yes, they invested in trust.
Yes.
Where this journey was beginning. So my task in mediation is to try and to rekindle the reason why we are here. That is, this is what we believed in. And by doing that, I'm trying to massage their conscience so that they may decide, yes, I can, by virtue of evidence, I can demonstrate that I own all of this. But by virtue of where we began, how do you think you want to navigate this journey in a way that is almost conflict-free and allows you to proceed in life without this one always clawing you back and pulling you back into a battlefield? Yes. So we will have the conversation around how do you want to deal with this in a way that is most reasonable in terms of how you see the quality of life it will bring you. Because many times people have not used the opportunities in mediation to navigate that kind of conflict, and they've proceeded to court where they demonstrate and show all the evidence that they actually should get all of this. But after they have gotten a ruling that actually gives them what they want, now they don't have the quality of life because this person will not give them the privilege because they didn't have this opportunity to navigate their emotions, ventilate, and start seeing rationally what is reasonable. So the answer to how they're resolving this is in their hands, in their minds. But I am massaging their conscience to see how they can resolve it in a way that helps them to retain power and peace of mind.
So you're basically pushing both parties to compromise.
Yes.
To find a way to meet each other halfway.
Yes.
There are some cases where I'm sure you'll tell us where people have come and property is registered in one of the party's names.
Yes.
And then this other party is basically coming to try to prove that they contributed towards the acquisition of this property. In some cases, property is jointly owned and jointly registered.
Yes.
And the dispute then is on, after we've parted ways, who does what with their share of this property? How do you handle those two? Let's start with this latter aspect, where, many cases nowadays, people are co-registering and co-owning property.
Yes.
And you've come to that end of a relationship.
Yes.
And this one person says, I want to keep it. The other one says, if you keep it, then you give me my money. Because I wanted us to sell it so I can have money to move on. Because you see, you've taken the money and you've taken with that, blah, blah, blah. So I need something.
Yes.
How do you resolve those disputes?
Right. Let me even throw a spanner in the works a little. So this couple is living here. They have a family, or they're doing what they're doing together. But the man impresses upon the woman because she's in these many chamas and there's opportunity for resources.
Yes.
So she actually gets this loan
from the chamas.
From her chamas. And the money is what buys this piece of land, which now, as the point of when we're buying it, the money is promising to help pay it off. But at the point of this piece of land being put on a deed, it turns up with one name.
The man's name.
Yeah, more often than not. So you see how this is really awkward. I borrowed the money. You promised to pay back the loan. Now it's my salary.
That's repaying.
Yes, but you
End up
have
with
your
the
name
property.
on the deed.
Yeah.
It's very complex. It's very complex. The only reason she literally withdrew the money and put it in the man's hands is not that her hands couldn't hand over the money. She was working on the basis of the best interests
The
of
trust.
us, the trust. And that is what she feels is being betrayed here. I put trust in you, in us. So in mediation, that is what I need to trigger back. How did we get started? What was the goodwill that we intended from this? And there are tools in mediation that is used to navigate these people's conscience. It's called a BATNA. What's my best alternative to a negotiated settlement? What's my worst alternative? If I needed to live a reasonable quality of life, what decisions do I want to make? Is my conscience, can it come alive to understand that actually this is a ripoff? What I'm doing is not right. I need to really just do the right thing. We need to go to the lands office somewhere and move this title back to this name. Because really that is what it should read. And if we are unable in mediation space to help you see through those lenses, clearly court maybe cannot be avoided. Worst case scenario, maybe the grave.
Well,
But go ahead and do.
No, go ahead.
No, please, I insist. Go ahead.
Okay, sure.
please mediate.
Yes.
Do you find that mediation then usually becomes the way out? That people are choosing mediation over the court system to be able to sit and say, okay, let's duke this out here, as opposed to going into the courts, and why?
And sometimes they don't choose mediation up front.
Okay.
They actually choose mediation when they
last
look through
resort.
yes.
Okay.
Because they've gone to court and maybe it's taken 20 years. A child that was born
It's
is
an
now
adult.
20 and they're still battling. The same resources they want to redeem in this property is the same they're expending on lawyers. So they actually come to their senses. Now, when that now is the ventilation process of the resources are actually dwindling and it's going to other people's pockets. Can we talk about this? Is there a way we can talk about this? Now they start to, choose mediation. Let's talk about this. And you find that when they have experienced the toils of what that legal process brings their way, they are more agreeable to settling this conversation in mediation because the outcomes that you settle in mediation, you're able to execute. If it was a boundary issue, we are okay to go and bomoa this wall and put it here because we discussed, nursed our emotions, brought out what our frustrations are, and we were heard and we were understood. And therefore, when we are finding a new solution, we are taking into account what this one found was hurtful and disrespectful, and what this one feels is the right thing to do because I felt in the first instance you are actually disregarding my right and my interest in this matter. Yes.
Do you ever have situations where people come to mediation because they want to save their marriage?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And are there instances when you've advised people that the best way forward is to actually part?
It's not for me to tell them to part. It's for me to say the risks that I see, the risks that this brings is X, Y, and Z. So how you want to navigate that journey around those risks is now for you to pronounce. Maybe sometimes they say, I want a separation. Let's have a separation and see how things go for 5 months. Meanwhile, let's see if our relationship, this emotional butterfly effect thing, can rekindle. All right? So then they will actually do that decision. It's their decision. It's not my decision that if someone goes out of the mediation room and they go and stray, then the new fight when we meet the next time is now there's infidelity. No, it's not going to be on me because I said you should separate and try separation for a while. They're going to have to name it, and they're going to name how do they want to live now that it's a preservation venture to see if their marriage can heal. It's not about going to explore. So they will bind each other. But as we are separated, this is also how we deal with the opposite sex. And we want to do this and we don't want to do this. So are we separating in the same house, out of the same house? What are we doing? Different bedrooms? It's their conversation. It's their choices. I cannot pronounce. I cannot pronounce what they're going to do.
But can you suggest?
I'd be curious.
Because you talked about caucuses.
Yes, caucuses.
You talk about caucuses when you say, okay, here, look, this is what X is saying they can do, while maintaining this sensitivity upon which all of this is based on.
Yes.
This is what this side is saying that they can live with.
Right.
This is what you're saying your barest irreducible minimums are.
Yes.
Can you suggest? You're not making the decision, but
Yes.
you know, you're placing it on the table. Can you do that?
Not outrightly. Say, these people are fighting, okay? The makeup is great. Now, this woman feels because the makeup is great, it can get better because this man promises that if I don't do certain things, then he doesn't need to beat me. But this woman is conflicted because she knows she needs to be in a safe place. She needs to not be in the space where she'll be beaten all the time. But because the makeup is great, and this is the school of thought of the violence we live in and the cyclical way, the cycle of violence we live in as humans and as partners, there is a part of this relationship that is really sweet, even though the bigger part is nasty. So then she keeps on wanting to break the circuit of abuse by leaving this man.
Yeah.
But the makeup is always the restoration valve. It's great. When the makeup comes, we are in Dubai, we're watching World Cup, we're doing this, I have a new car.
Yeah.
You see, it's amazing things, the things that this man does to redeem. So therefore, where I'm sitting as Irene, seeing this conflict, is not the same way she's seeing this conflict. She's not seeing it that way because I don't benefit from the makeups, but she does. So when I sit with her in caucus, I don't talk about leaving. I talk about safety. How do you think you can stay safe? What things can keep you safe? So she can start mirroring the pain, not just what the makeups bring. So she may actually say, I think I may go and live with my parents for a bit. You see, I can nudge that conversation. And if you should go, if you should decide to go and stay with your parents for a bit, how do you want to work around the bigger picture that brought you here? How do you want to continue journeying there? You see how I'm supporting the idea to go. I'm supporting her own thinking. But I am bringing it in subtle ways so that she will not go back and say when they are in the great makeup mode, it's that woman of Frida who said I should.
She kept telling me I should leave.
And they throw you under the bus. Any day, every day. They do throw you under the bus. So you're safer not being the engineer of certain words that you know may be used against you, but you know the bigger picture with your mediation experience. You know how this person, if they made these choices, maybe it may break the circuit. So without naming them overtly, you know how to bring the conversation around the table in ways that also allows you to stay safe.
What are some of the common issues that you have found over time,
Yes.
common here, that are brought to FIDA for mediation?
The bulk really of issues, custody and maintenance. Custody and maintenance is almost 80%. Matrimonial property is a smaller percentage. Property people have is not matrimonial property, but it's property that people have invested in together is then also another smaller percentage. Succession. Parents died. There's a booty here that people don't know how to navigate and share. That also is another smaller percentage. But the bulk
It's custody.
is custody and maintenance. Okay? If they came earlier, much earlier, when they were still in this space where, do I want it, do I not want it? Maybe then marital restoration might have been also a big part of these matters that we help them with. But like I said earlier, most of the time, people come and they already, walisha jipanga. They have known how to redeem themselves in this journey that they think is going south.
So it's mostly about the custody. Now,
Yes. Custody and maintenance.
this maintenance bit, the greater percentage as well
Yes.
will be the women seeking maintenance.
Yes.
And are they using the children as leverage?
And many times that can happen. All right. And that's why then there is a professional mediator who keeps the things where the things are supposed to be. For instance, we have been living together and our children go to the private school
Yeah.
that is not too far away from us.
Yeah.
And it's manageable for us. Within our finances, we've actually managed that. But now that we're apart, and maybe, and God bless you, maybe you have stumbled upon big bucks. You sprung out of COVID and you got this new job that is going to really line your pockets nicely.
Yeah.
But I don't know how you got that job, but maybe you need to return favors, which means maybe you're abandoning this ship so you can jump on that other ship.
Yep.
Okay? So I see this new box and I'm thinking, okay, when we were in the dumps, we struggled there
We're
together.
struggling together in the trenches.
So now that you're jumping, you've gone,
Now you've gotten
there's a
some
leap.
money, imekupatia
It's time
kiburi.
for us to soothe our experiences with your new money. Okay? So you find I may, as a woman, say, okay, so this ship is sinking. How do I get some of that? So I decide that suddenly our children can't go to this private school that they've been going to. Now we are separating. Now they need to live the quality of life that money should bring. Now they are moving to British systems. We're starting to talk really big money in terms of the children's schooling. And sometimes the men come to say, I disagree with this conversation because the woman is more about give me the money in my hands.
Yeah.
Let me go and pay these things and I will give you receipts. But the men are saying, no, give me the structure, the school fee structure. I want, if that is the new fees, they're my children.
I'll pay
I
to the
want the
school.
money to. So sometimes men feel that there's the fishing expeditions. There's how people amplify the truth.
But Irene, here I'm hearing power play here. I have the might,
Yes.
and I am going to decide how this thing works. Really,
Yes.
and I'm also hearing that many of the cases that come to you,
Yes.
these women are, if I may use a term that is commonly used, are disempowered.
Very true. And now allow me to qualify that feeder actually, the ideal feeder client is the woman who is not earning much. If feeder did not offer a free legal service, they actually would have to let go of that right. They are indigent women most of the time. So they are not the women who are wielding huge paychecks. So they actually, most of them are struggling.
Have you had cases of men who come in, again, this sharing and pairing thing
Yes.
of properties and so forth, where it is the man who's claiming maintenance?
Very few, but yes. There are men actually who come to feeder who created children, but because of how life deals us certain blows, they're actually back living with mommy. So they are 40-year-old man who we invite to mediation by virtue of the fact they're a biological parent, but they tag mommy along because she's the one who can decide how much of her resources she's going to contribute to her grandchildren. So there is a very critical element in mediation. It's called the authority to settle. So you don't sit around a table in mediation and you don't have the people who have the authority to settle. And therefore, if this man will also during the conversation around providing for the children, also say, oh, by the way, you were supporting us when we were married. I was a house husband.
Yep.
All right? And you were providing for all our needs. So I will continue requesting you to provide for my needs because you did when we lived together. That is a conversation that can come on the table.
Has it come?
Not yet. Maybe ego is doing a number on that, but it hasn't come. But in terms of a man bringing his mother along to help fulfill his duty to his children, that happens quite a number of times.
Then it actually has come. Because by the time you tag your mother along, it means it's an admission that you have found it difficult to fulfill those duties.
Yes.
That is putting it as politely as I can.
Yes.
And so you require support. So you bring in the support battalion.
Irene, if somebody wanted to get your services,
Yes.
how would they get to you?
Okay. There's a toll-free number, 0800 720 501.
0800 720 501.
That you call without airtime, without anything. You just call and you reach feeder. So that is First Avenue.
Okay.
If you know where our offices are, we run a legal aid clinic. It's on Amboseli Road in Lavington. We run a legal aid clinic Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in Nairobi, and Monday and Tuesday in the regional offices, which is Kisumu and Mombasa. We have CBOs, community-based organizations, that we collaborate with at the grassroots levels. And if you get in touch with them or you stumble upon them, they will give you a reduced version of the service that we would offer you at the 3 feeder offices.
Okay.
Yes.
Irene, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank
We
you.
welcome you
for
to come
having
again
me.
soon.
Thank you.
Irene Ocholla is the Client Service Officer, Access to Justice at the Federation of Women Lawyers in Kenya, FIDA Kenya. We've been talking about gender-sensitive mediation and the importance of actually taking into consideration all that and wearing the gender lens. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It's the Situation Room. We're coming up to the top of the hour. Remember, buy Kiwi, stand a chance of winning what?
35,000 shillings.
School fees.
Guaranteed
Stand up
airtime.
and shine.